I'm your basic average girl, and I'm here to save the world. You can't stop me cause I'm impossible.
So I'm sure that for many of you, you want to go into the world of animation, and easily one of the most recognizable jobs that you can go in there, or one of the most recognizable elements to have your job be recognized, is to go into character design. I mean, when you watch a cartoon, an animated series, or a movie, what can be more iconic than looking at how the characters are drawn? And I am actually here with a true animation veteran who has mastered that craft, Steven Silver. Steven, how are you today? And by the way, is it Steven or Stefan?
Yes, Steven.
Okay, good. I got it right on the first try.
Yes, but the PH throws people off, but doing very well. Thanks, Matt.
All right, good, good. So, I guess the first question that I would like to ask you is, what is it that got you into animation in the first place? Like, what is it that inspired you to go and enter into this field and make it your entire profession?
Yeah, I was always fascinated by art. I remember ever since I was 6 years old, I found an artist sketchbook laying in my backyard. And from that point on, it made me just want to draw. And that's where my drawing started. But then when I was in high school, I discovered caricature artists. And I all of a sudden discovered this love of caricature and started to learn. And Mad Magazine was one of those magazines that I discovered. I'm like, wow, look at this just amazing work, this humorous illustration. And that sort of really piqued my interest. And when I graduated high school, I went into just doing caricatures, but always had such a love for Disney and the movies and watching cartoons growing up. There was always that love. I never knew what I was going to be or how art was going to transcend in my life until I started doing caricatures at theme parks where I was hired. And then when animation really kicked in was, I remember my parents had sent me an article. I was out of the house by that time. I was maybe about 22 years old or so. And my parents sent me an article. This was back in 1996 when Lion King, I believe, had just come out, and they were just talking about the popularity and how it's what it's doing. And I saw that article, and all of a sudden it just made me think about animation. Like, wow, this could be an actual career, because I never went to art school or anything. So I didn't know anything about really what jobs or careers to take. And from that point, I ended up going to a meeting one time. I would always go to cartoonist meetings where cartoonists were talking. And there was a storyboard artist who worked on a show called Freakazoid, if you're familiar with that, from Warner Brothers back in the day.
Yes, I remember that one.
Yeah, it was a great show. And he was there, and I showed him my portfolio, and he said, hey, you got some pretty good stuff. You got a long ways to go, but keep in touch. And then it was about a year later, I reached out to him again and said, hey, I've been working really hard on my portfolio. Would you like to see my portfolio? And he invited me up to the Warner Brothers studios. And from that point on, he took my portfolio, took it to some powers that be of a show called Hysteria, a producer and director. And that's where it started for me. And that was my first gig into animation, into this whole new world that I knew of. I just never knew about the structure of it. I didn't even know, to be honest with you, what a character designer was, what a character designer's job was at that point when I was hired. I just had a lot of caricatures in my portfolio, and the show I was hired on, Hysteria, was very caricature heavy. So they just needed someone who could do caricatures, and it was like a perfect match, and that's how it started for me in the animation.
That is really interesting, I must say. And considering that the start for you, not just in animation, but in art in general, is the fact that you really got interested into caricature, I am curious to know, are there any caricaturists that heavily inspired you to become who you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the main ones, there were two actually from Mad Magazine. One of them was Mort Drucker, and the other was Jack Davis. But the one that really inspired and really inspired me when I was doing animation, because I really had to simplify, was a caricature artist by the name of Al Hirschfeld. And he was the great inspiration for me for Kim Possible. Just the line and just getting that nice flowing line, and just really that you don't need so many lines. Where Mort Drucker, Jack Davis, there was a lot of cross hatching and everything, but they really got great likenesses, and it was a great to use that sort of style influence when I was in the theme parks, but not for animation.
I see, yes. I mean, even for me, I'm also a huge fan of the works of Al Hirschfeld. They truly are inspiring, just like with a few simple lines, and like you could just bring art to life. And now that like you have entered upon into animation and you've settled yourself as a character designer, I would like to know that for you specifically, what is it about both caricatures and character design that really interests you most in the field of animation, more so than the other aspects of animation? Because I did research that in your earlier works, such as Hysteria, The Fairly Odd Parents, and even a little bit of Recess, that you did touch upon in many different fields, like you were a storyboard artist or a prop artist, that you went into several different places, but you ultimately stuck to character design.
Yeah, character design for me, I think what's the most amazing thing for me about that, it really ties in with caricature. To me, caricature and character design are one and the same. It's all about taking people's faces, their personality, and just squashing and stretching it and breathing some life and feeling into them. So character design became one of those areas where I was always getting to draw upon people's personality, and it was just fun. It was just more engaging to me than having to do a prop design or even do a storyboard or anything like that. So my whole career was just as a character designer, just because I kept feeling like that's where my strength was, when I could look at people and I had a good memory for observation and capturing people and their emotions and how they walk and how they look. And I think that's where, whenever we look at any of these animated shows too, that's where the real heart, or any illustrations, we always drawn to a person's character. We want to see that. We want to see the personality. And it was just one of those things, for love of drawing people. And I love doing life drawing and figure drawing. So it really all tied together, from figure drawing to caricature and character design, was just a great merging trio, really, in order to be a character designer.
Mm-hmm. Actually, that does sound interesting, that last thing you mentioned about like the trio. It does sound like an interesting component for character design. Can you elaborate a bit more on this trio?
Yeah, so learning how to draw, when you're doing character design, the most essential thing is really to incorporate feeling into a character and have a greater understanding of that character. And how you do that is through gesture, because you can just design a character and you could just have them standing there just looking straight at you like a front three-quarter view, but the drawing sort of misses a life component. It's important to know how to do. All of a sudden you have to do the turnarounds and you have to create other assets in character design, but having that understanding of drawing a human figure, that enters into your character design, which starts to breathe that life and energy. So now you can move that character around, and it becomes, all of a sudden, there's a personality. So without gesture, I feel like it's a component that tends to be missing in a lot of character designers' works if they're not doing enough of that. And then the caricature, of course, really taps into relationships, squash and stretch, big against small. And these are the same philosophies that you're using constantly when I'm designing a brand new character. And how do I make that one character look a little bit more villainous, like a guy like Draken? You know, how do I make this other character look a little bit more soft and gentle, like it could be like a Rufus or something like that? And these are just the different ideas. Once you start to mix all these together, you'll start to get great results. And figure drawing, it teaches you construction, lighting, balance, just understanding knowledge of placement. So that's why those aspects are very important.
I see. Wow. Like it really does sound like there's a lot of like of a thought process that goes into it before you actually start the drawing. And it does lead me to my next question that I would like to know, because the fact that there's a lot that does go into character design, what would you say is the biggest challenge of being a character designer, rather it be working on the project itself, or the fact that you would go and, like, whenever you would jump from job to job, they would look drastically different from what you previously did. Like, Kim Possible looks nothing like Danny Phantom, or Danny Phantom looks nothing like the recent Johnny Test reboot, for example.
Right. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that are going to be involved in being a character designer. And one of those is you've got to be extremely versatile, even when you're putting together your portfolio. So anyone out there in your audience that wishes to do something like this, I would say to them, make sure that you have a lot of variety, because you want to show them that, because like you mentioned, every show is different, every studio is different, and they're going to have the different styles. So if you can be almost like a chameleon and adapt, that's going to make it more likely that you're going to get that job. So things you want to get strong at is learn how to construct. You have to have a good construction aspect and know how to construct characters, I think, is one of the major components. But you want to make sure you learn how to do turnarounds and have turnarounds in your portfolio. And I think one of the challenges that character designers face is just getting the job as a character designer, because everyone kind of wants to be a character designer. So on most productions, you'll only maybe have 2 to 3 character designers on each production, where you could have 15, or more storyboard artists on a production. So there's a lot more jobs in that area. So it's a competitive field. And the most important thing you want to do is just really build up your draftsmanship. Make sure you're showing that versatility. Make sure you show that variety. Make sure you have solid draftsmanship. And that's going to help you as a character designer in the field, and just something to think about. And there's things as a character designer, you got to be willing to you're going to be working off scripts all the time. So you don't always just get to make up the characters that you want to make up, right? Here we get a script, especially for television animation, where things are really written out a lot of the times, and you go, oh, I might go to the writer or the director and say, so you wrote about this character, what more can I ask you some more questions? So you want to be able to ask questions, discover a little bit more about this character, be willing to be rejected a lot is a very important thing. You're going to do a lot of designs that are just going to get shot down, because the production aspect of it is draw hundreds of concepts, hundreds of designs, and then maybe the director will go, no, it's the wrong look, it's not what we're looking for, and then it's back to the drawing board. So those are things that you want to think about when you're doing character design.
Yeah, even with you, by the way, I'm sure you probably had experience of like that kind of rejection. Like, in terms of the series and movies and stuff like that you've worked on, how many times, for example, that you've faced rejection for the kinds of drawings that you've done?
Really many times, but I also want to say that I never look at it as a failure, or I don't take it ever personally, because I know going into this, there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen, right? And you're going in, it's a team effort, it's a team collaboration, and there's a lot of back and forth. But yeah, absolutely, you're going to be working and you're going to think sometimes, oh, this character's great, I love this character, and all of a sudden it's going to be like, no, it's the wrong one, we got to change it. And sometimes the characters might even get dumbed down from what you wanted. You thought that this would be more ideal, and then someone else says, no, do this, and you're like, oh, that's not such a great change. And oftentimes on a show, you may be doing anywhere from, let's just say, 5 characters to almost 100 characters that you need to design. You're doing crowd scenes, you're doing incidental characters, and some productions, there's only about 2 weeks to do it all. Some of them, they'll give you 3 weeks to do it all. So it's not like feature animation where you just get a lot more time. In television animation, you got to be really quick, and you're thrown into this environment, and here the scripts are given to you. A breakdown of all the characters is given to you. We need this character in the coffee shop. We need, Kim Possible wearing snow gear. We need this wearing that. And so you have costume changes. You have all the production assets, and then even you have the production people coming into your office when you're working on one show and saying, we need something for this other show that shipped. So we need it right now and today. So then you're thrown into that sort of multitasking scenario. So it's a very fast-paced job.
I see. Wow. It already sounds stressful as it is. I'm only listening to it and I'm like, oh God, it's already going too quick for me.
It really is. It's rewarding. There's nothing more rewarding than being able to see your characters come alive on screen. And all of a sudden, because you don't see the animation, right? The animation is where the magic really happens. And I'm there sitting at the desk. I'm designing these. It goes from my department to the color department, or sometimes the cleanup department, depends what sort of show it is, and then it goes to the storyboard artists, and then it goes overseas and it gets animated, and it comes back, and all of a sudden you see it for the first time animated. Sometimes you could be in shock of horror, just like, oh my word, they messed that one up, we need to do a retake and send it back. But otherwise you're like, wow, that is so cool, just to see the way all of a sudden the hair moves now, or the way they walk, where sometimes I don't think about that. It may be in my mind when I'm drawing them and their stature, I might think, they might be a little bit more slouched, they may be more confident, but all of a sudden you see, oh, that's how the character runs, that's how the character walks, or even talks, because you don't even hear the voices a lot of the time. Sometimes you'd get the voice track before I designed the characters. Sometimes they took my character and tried to find a voice for what they thought the character sounded like, but I wouldn't know until it came back in animation and go, oh, wow, that's how they put together the voice and the character. Yeah.
I'm sure you've experienced that so many times throughout the years of your career.
Yeah.
And I do apologize early if this is too tough of a question to go and ask you, but amongst all the works that you have done, from Kim Possible to Danny Phantom to Hysteria to Clerks the Animated Series, what would you say is your personal favorite project that you've worked on, or which is the project that you've worked on that had like your favorite character designs that you have done?
I think I would always say is Kim Possible for me. I think not only did I love the environment that I was in, I loved being at Disney. I loved working there. I loved the crew that I was with. I've worked with a lot of great crews over the years on shows, but there was something just starting that one from scratch. I had just come off the show. What was I on? I was on a show called Weekenders, Disney's Weekenders. And I was doing that show, and now they were trying to find the look for Kim Possible. So my director, who I worked with on Clerks, said, hey, you want to take a stab at drawing some Kim Possible? This is a new show. We want to see what you do. And they liked what I was doing. And then they took me off of Weekenders and moved me on to Kim Possible full time to develop that show. And I just loved all the characters. There was this fun, comical aspect to it. I mean, I always loved getting the scripts, and it was just getting to see the new villains that were coming on screen, and oh, that will be a fun one to draw. Duff Killigan, yeah, what does that guy look like? What does Monkey Fist look like? And you're just trying to envision what these characters look like, and it was really a different time in the studio when it was happening too, and it was just, I think for that reason, I really enjoyed it the most.
Oh, that does sound fun. And also, just a quick question, just on a side note, I do recall that you mentioned that, like, when you were just a caricaturist, that you were working at a theme park. Was it at Disney, or was it at a different theme park altogether?
Yeah, it was a different theme park. So I started at SeaWorld in San Diego.
Oh.
So that's where I started there. And then I moved to Minneapolis, and I worked at the Mall of America there. And then I worked at another theme park out there. I was at the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. I was drawing there, and then I would just bounce around to all different areas doing that. So I was making a life and a living as an artist just doing caricatures. I was doing lots of private parties and events and conventions, and that was my life until I got into the animation industry in 1997.
I gotta say, that actually sounds pretty cool, because you were on tour by doing your caricatures. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was really cool. I get to see a lot of new things and new places that I would have never seen or experienced, for sure.
Oh, it does sound lovely. But when you did talk about how when you were working on Kim Possible, I'm sure times were definitely different back then. But Nowadays, however, the tides have certainly changed, and it did become a bit more controversial. I'm sure you've probably have heard about this with the hashtag New Deal for Animation, where now animators are working on trying to get a better deal with the union to make sure that they get treated more fairly and have their wages be a lot more fair. Considering how you are an animation veteran yourself, do you mind giving us a little bit of your thoughts on the current situation with hashtag New Deal for Animation?
Yeah, I think it's just a very important thing. I believe that as we're moving into this just era of entertainment with all the streaming services, it's got to be a win-win situation. And the artists and the people behind it, the machine behind it, the production people behind it, just everything, it makes or breaks the whole cycle. Without us, there's nothing. There's no merchandise. There's no TV shows. There's no movies. There's none of that. And I think just to have those fair wages is very important. Like one of the things we're trying to change, when streaming first started, we had a clause where the studios, this was called side letter N, and it was where the studios were basically, hey, we don't know what's going to come of streaming. We don't know if it's going to be successful or not. So we're not going to pay people who work on streaming platforms as much, and you're not going to get the benefits, and you're not going to get this. Now, of course, streaming has proven itself way beyond, and we know what it does. So one of those things are in the New Deal is trying to get rid of the side letter N and saying that every production, regardless whether it's on streaming service or on the TV, that the artists are paid fairly and their benefits are given to them, because it's something where, and getting just the raises at the end of the year, the regular 3% raise, sort of living wages, and all just around fairness in regards to testing. And there's a lot of different things that are coming up with it, and we're just trying to create a new deal to where it's fair, right? And just make everyone happy, because I believe in that, and I think everyone really believes in that. And if you make your artists happy and you keep your teams happy and the people that are the real driving force, then it makes it just makes for a good working relationship. And I feel very strongly that we will. I don't feel we're going to get everything we want, but I think we're working hard to try to get it. And I think hopefully it'll just open up doors to even other studios coming on as part of a union, just to help and get the benefits, right? So that you work these long hours, and a lot of people miss out on their families and certain things. And just to, especially live in California is very expensive if you're going to be working out here. So any little thing will help and just give an incentive for more artists to join into the industry and make a good living wage from it.
Yeah, and so far with what New Deal for Animation is demanding, have you so far been feeling the effects of like some of the drawbacks of the current stance of how the animation union is, or so far have you been doing well for yourself?
Yeah, I think everyone, including myself, just doing well in that sense. It's going, it's moving. Even during the pandemic, that was another thing where all the live action, everything shut down, but animation was the only industry that kept going, and we were producing and we came through. And so sometimes to be treated or told that, you're really not so worthy yet, we carried the industry in a way. And there were a lot of productions that weren't doing animation that started to move into animation because they knew that, well, the artists, they can work from home and they can do this. But yeah, there hasn't been any major hiccup that I would say that stopped people from just working in as a union member in the animation industry. I think because we do have a standard of wages, right? So that's something that's good. There is a minimum. If you're going to be a union working artist, and that means working at the studios like Disney, DreamWorks, Cartoon Network, Warner Brothers, Sony, some of the big boys out there, working in those studios, you're going to go in and you will get a decent living wage, but you also need to, a good living wage, I'm going to say. They pay really well But it's important just to make sure that you know what those wages are when you're going into the industry, so that you don't go in, because sometimes producers will try to lowball you, or they'll try to get you to work overtime and they're not going to pay you for overtime. So there's a lot of issues with overtime and things like that that need to just be dealt with.
Right. That is definitely true. So, like, it's more about giving yourself an importance, like, by joining the union, and that you do demand to be treated fair. That's correct?
Yeah, and there's great benefits, as an artist, to have your health benefits and things like that, and a pension. For all of a sudden, maybe you're drawing and working for so long that your hand starts to get carpal tunnel and you can no longer draw. You get to a certain age and you can't even draw anymore, and you have to leave the industry. But to know that you have some form of protection and that you have something, a pension or of some sort going into it, I think is another, benefit of the union and what we've put together.
Of course. I wish I could have some kind of benefit like that as a YouTuber. We don't really get any of those benefits. We're all on our own for that thing, or at least for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, what's very interesting about you right now is that not only are you also working on more character designs in the industry, but also you're becoming a teacher with something called the Silver Drawing Academy. Can you describe us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so for many years, I found that I just had this knack for teaching. Like, teaching for me it just came very natural. And I always felt I was always helping people and always guiding people, and I'm looking at their work, or they were coming to me and saying, hey, how do you think I can make this better? So it was just very natural for me. And then I decided, this was probably about maybe 10 years ago, I decided to start my own school called the Silver Drawing Academy. And that started actually in my garage in my house. I was just taking 4 students at a time. And then I eventually moved into a big warehouse where I had a school there. And then during the pandemic, that sort of led me into, wow, I got to move this online. So I moved it online. And what it is, it's a character design school where I'm training artists, everything about just character design, but about drawing too, about observing, about ways of having the right mindset, what to put together in your portfolio. And also I meet up with the artists and members every single week, and we do these interactive drawing hangouts. And it's really a school just to help you build your confidence in drawing, but also prepare you for the workforce if you wish to be even an illustrator, a comic artist, a toy designer, anything that has to do with character design. It's really that place where I can work with you and guide artists into moving into that direction.
I see. And considering that, you do that, and you, already, it sounds like you really have expanded where, before the pandemic at least, that you even had you had a place where, you would go and have your students there. But have you had any difficulties trying to balance those two things with your job as a character designer in the industry and as a teacher for the Silver Drawing Academy? Because it does sound like 2 full-time jobs, and trying to balance those out is not easy.
Yeah, for the last 14 years, actually, I've been fortunate enough to work freelance. So this is my studio. I don't know if it's getting dark in here. I should turn on a little light in here. But this is where I've been working as an artist for many years and doing different projects for different studios. And sometimes those projects might last 1 week, they might last 3 weeks. So it's really a balance, and I've found that I'm really good at balancing my time. I have a calendar by my side. I limit myself to about 4 to 5 tasks a day, and I work through this, and I find that I was always able to juggle it. And if I needed to stay up later, I stayed up later. If I needed to wake up early in the morning, I'll wake up earlier in the morning. But so it's been a real comfortable balance, and I think even more so because I love it so much. So it never felt like there was work, much like as with what you do, it's like the same thing. You find this sort of love and this passion for something, and sure, there'll be those moments where, oh gosh, this is a lot on my plate, I have to deal with this. But as a professional, we come through and we go, okay, let's just kind of get through this, and we know that we'll make it work. Yeah.
So, you mentioned of the fact that passion is what really drove you. Do you think, like, to this day, even after all these years working in the industry, working as a teacher, that passion is pretty much your key to keep going with what you're doing in your life?
It is. Passion just plays a huge part of this because it allows you to really never quit. I think if you're passionate about something, if you truly love something, you're going to find other ways around it. If something's not working out, you go, oh, I might be having a bad drawing day, but because I know that it's not going to last forever. And then I know by tomorrow, oh, I'm feeling a lot better. But it is a huge driving force in helping me every day just look at the drawing board and work on something. Today, nowadays, I have this art desk back here. I don't really draw for animation on that anymore. Everything is now on the computer using what's called the Wacom Cintiq is what I use. And just, it's one of those things where it's always, it's part of you. And especially when you're an artist and this is what you do, it's within you. And it's almost like you have to get it out somehow. And if you just hold it in for too long, well, I think it's detrimental, and oh, I gotta get it out. So for me, it's just something that flows naturally, but passion plays a huge role, and it's really following up with it also makes you want to learn and improve, because if once you realize that I want to get in the art industry and this is something that I want to improve upon and get better at, well, I want to look at what are things that I can do to improve? What are resources out there? What do I need to work on? What things can I study? What things can I practice? And there's this eagerness because you have this goal. Oh, I want to work in animation someday, or I want to have my own comic book or my own company. I want to do illustrations. I want to do advertising. There could be so many different areas to move into, but that passion absolutely will drive you through those bad days.
Yeah, that definitely sounds familiar, actually, considering even with what I do, I've been driven by passion with everything I do, whether it be like making videos on YouTube or even just working as a voice actor. In fact, I actually just came back from a voice acting session before starting this interview.
Oh, did you? Oh,
yeah.
Can you say anything about it? Like, was it for a cartoon, a commercial?
It's for a cartoon. I can't say much yet, but
Right.
I had a wonderful time with it.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
this was definitely an awesome time chatting with you. And if there is one more question I'd like to ask, and
Yeah.
this is for the people watching this, if you have one piece of advice that you want to give to people who wish to become someone like you and become a very well-known and beloved character designer, what would be the advice that you want to give?
I would say love what it is you're trying to get into. Just really practice different things, and to be a character designer, or maybe you don't want to be a character designer, but I would say it's so important to carry a sketchbook and be an observer of life. The more observant you are of life, the more experience and everything you're going to be able to bring back into your work. And through that experience, that's what other people are going to see and witness. And they're going to discover you that way because you're showing your true passion, you're showing your gift, you're showing what you love. So I would just encourage you to make sure that you try to find out what that thing is that you want to do and just go for it.
Definitely. That sounds wonderful. So, Stephen, thank you so much for joining me on this. It was a great pleasure chatting with you all. And it's also a great pleasure having you watch this as well. So I want to say thank you all for watching this. And until next time, see you later, dudes.